Hare Krishna, everyone. This is the International Books Are the Basis Week interview series. My name is Namras Das. We are here representing the ISKCON Ministry of Education. And this is a week from September 22nd to 28th where they're doing daily interviews with various devotees regarding the reading of Srila Prabhupada's books, the importance, and hearing people's devotees' perspectives on this topic. So today we're going to be just discussing the connection between Kirtan and reading Srila Prabhupada's book. So we have various Kirtaniyas here, well-known Kirtaniyas, who'll be answering a few questions, sharing their realizations regarding this wonderful and important topic. So first of all, I'd like to get into introductions. This is Giri Govardhan Prabhu from Mayapur here. Giri Govardhan Prabhu, please tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll have the other introductions.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for inviting me here in this panel. Well, my name is Giri Govardhan Das. I am from Venezuela, South America, but I've been living in Mayapur for the last 8 years. I joined ISKCON 1991, and I got initiated by my Guru Maharaj is Veera Bahu Das, who is also the Джи-би-си from South America.
Somehow these headphones
So, well, I've been doing many services ever since I joined. I was a brahmachari for 5 years in the temple, and well, get to do all kinds of services there, including book distribution. So I had my encounter and relationship with books very early also. Then I've been doing Kirtan ever since in Venezuela, and then here in Maya. We have a group, it's a Kirtan group, and we travel all around India, doing all kinds of festivals. And so that's
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Akishna Krishna Prabhu from Sri Vrindavan Dham, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, Hare Krishna. My name is Akishna Krishna Das. I started associating with devotees around the mid-90s. I got my first books from Srila Prabhupada. I think it was in 1992 or 3, I think. And about the last 10 years, I've mostly been based in Sri Vrindavan Dham. And I've also spent a fair amount of time traveling with one of our ISKCON sannyasis for Kirtan programs. And while in Vrindavan, I've tried to regularly participate in the 24-hour Kirtan here. Kirtan has been like a really important aspect of my humble endeavors in Krishna consciousness. And thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Gauravani Prabhu, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hare Krishna. Thanks for having me, for inviting me. Whenever I get to associate with the devotees, I feel like my life has purpose and meaning. Especially that devotees somehow or other consider me a Kirtaniya. What a great honor that we actually are somehow or other included in Lord Chaitanya's movement. How lucky are we? Child of devotee parents, disciples of Srila Prabhupada, grew up hearing probably Srila Prabhupada's voice probably from almost the first moments of my life. I imagine that probably the first recorded music I ever heard would have been Prabhupada chanting or Prabhupada chanting japa. So in that sense, I've been associating with Prabhupada's Vani for my whole life, but my heart is so dense, like lead, it doesn't seem to penetrate. So I have been, just to cut to the chase, I have had a long an interesting relationship with trying to really dive into Prabhupada's books and understand how to hear Srila Prabhupada with fresh ears that maybe someone who was coming from the battering material world filled with noise and nonsense Prabhupada might have pierced through that in a different way. For me, I've been learning how to find my way back to Srila Prabhupada's Vani in a way that is helping me to appreciate it. I live in Washington, D.C. I have 3 kids. I'm a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami. And I love Namras.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
Krishna Prabhu. And
Giri Govardhan Prabhu.
Giri Govardhan Prabhu and all the Mayapur Vasis, even though I've never met them, but I love them. And I even love the devotees who are helping behind the scenes.
Jai. So a little bit about me, Namras Das. I feel like Srila Prabhupada's books saved my spiritual life. Although I grew up as a devotee, I didn't really choose to be a devotee until I did Bhakti-Shastrы. In 2006, I did it in Vrindavan, and it really changed my life. So I have a lot to thank Srila Prabhupada's books for changing my life in that way and taking up Krishna consciousness more seriously. So let's get into it and talk a little bit about why do you feel that it's important that devotees read Srila Prabhupada's books, and what are the kind of struggles maybe devotees have? Like Gauravani Prabhu, you kind of touched on that a little bit for devotees who have grown up in the movement. What do you think are the struggles that devotees face when reading Srila Prabhupada's books? I mean, for me personally, it's a lot about finding time. But then again, you can find time for things you find are important. So maybe what are the... Anyway, I said the question, but let's take it from there. Giri Govardhan Prabhu, why don't you start us off?
Well, I think I can speak for myself.
Of course.
Because before joining the movement, I was not a reader, actually, so much. I was more into the audiovisual, but it was the books who were really, I didn't have very much relationship with books, but it was the books who brought me to Krishna consciousness. I remember I was sent to Canada for a year after I finished my high school. And at that time, my parents moved, and they didn't have any place where to put all the books of the house, so they just put them in my room because I wasn't there. When I came back, all these books were in my room, and I'm not a reader. So they just were there. When I met the devotees, then I started looking at these books and said, what are these books? That's the first time that I actually... And then I started going through all of them, and I found 3 books of Srila Prabhupada. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Karma, the Infallible Justice, and the Science of Self-Realization. They have been there in my house like for years, and I've never even seen them. And then by having these books in my room and I started reading them, then everything happened, no? So, but even during my time of devotee life, it's been actually a struggle. I've been trying to, when I was living in the temple, it was quite difficult because there was a lot of service to do. But you could, in the classes you hear, the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, at least there's that opportunity to be in class. And then by distributing them, you had to read some of them. What you're going to say to people. So there I was also forced to read them. So, but mostly difficulties, distraction. I sometimes fall asleep during reading these books. So I remember one devotee was distributing books, and he offered the book to the person. And then he said, well, you know what? My really problem is that I cannot sleep. I have insomnia. So the Prabhu used this argument and said, oh, this book is really good. Imagine in our temple, every time we start reading this book, everybody falls asleep. So this book is really good. So that's one of the difficulties, but as you mature in spiritual life, you understand that without these books and this knowledge, you cannot go deep. So,
yeah, I find that I read or I try to connect with the books a little more when I'm having some kind of difficulty in my life. I kind of like try to find some answers or something like that. Akinchana Prabhu, what about you? What do you find is a struggle that devotees face, or maybe from your perspective?
Yeah, I definitely think it can be hard to stay consistently motivated just to individually, read Prabhupada's books. Two things have helped me a lot in that regard. One thing is having other devotees to read with. I think that can be like a really nice way to associate with other devotees, especially here in Vrindavan, the head cook in the deity kitchen, Bhubaneshwar Prabhu. I had his association for a long time. He was like a very, very wonderful, very steady devotee who every night the program in his room was to read and to hear Shastra. And, he insisted that I read for him, like whenever I was there. And so for years, it's actually, now Bhubaneshwar, he passed away this year, very sadly. I mean, sadly for me, sadly for the devotees that loved him. So we've lost like his incredibly valuable association. But while he was here, he was a fantastic influence. And when I think about all the books that we went through together over the years, it's actually amazing how, we read Krishna books so many times. We read so many cantos of Bhagavatam. He loved to hear Caitanya Bhagavat. That was one of his favorites. And, sometimes a new book would come out, or a Back to Godhead magazine would come out, and he would ask me to read, portions or sections of those. Anyway, so, and it was always like wonderful, he was always very good about not being distracted. There was no prajalpa. There could be a little discussion or question. Actually, at one point, we were reading the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's like kind of dense technical reading, some of that, and at one point, after we had been going through it for several weeks, and so we'd progressed through so many chapters actually of the 11th canto, and at one point Bhubaneshwar said, "I'm so glad you're reading this to me, because on my own I would never go through all of this by myself." And I kind of laughed, and I said, Prabhu, if you weren't asking me to read this to you, I don't think I would go through all of this myself either. So like in that way, it was like, by the association of devotees, we were kind of a support for one another, and we were able to kind of maximize our potential for reading Prabhupada's books. So I just thought to share that if we can have devotees to read with, even now, I'm in a couple of like kind of social media groups, like WhatsApp groups and stuff, and devotees, they have programs where they read together. Maybe they're in a one-on-one group, or they're in groups with a few devotees, and they take turns, maybe reading a verse and a purport from Bhagavatam every day into their social media. And so in that way, it's like there may be different creative ways to associate with devotees, and not just kind of passing the time and having like friendly conversations, but let's make a time also where we read something together and we hear books together. So for me, that's been a very nice. And another thing, after Bhubaneswar Prabhu left, one thing that was very powerful is that when devotees were eulogizing him and sending their memories, practically all the younger devotees, they all said the same thing. They all said, "Oh, Bhubaneswar, I read so much Srimad Bhagavatam with him, in his association." So there were so many devotees that were affected in that way. It wasn't just that, because if I was around, he was hearing and reading. He was great at engaging, so many devotees in reading to him. So anyway, if devotees can kind of look to an example like that and encourage one another to read and to hear, that's one thing. I have a few more thoughts, but maybe I'll just leave it there for now.
Yeah, that's a great point. Using that strength in numbers and not just doing it by yourself, where it could be kind of maybe you get distracted, there's no one accountable for you. But if you do it with other devotees, then there's that point of discussion you can have as well, and you can even get through many books if you're doing it consistently. Thank you for that great point. Gaurvani Prabhu, maybe please share with us maybe some struggles someone may have, or if you could share your perspective.
One thing that's never worked for me is I should be as a motivation for my spiritual life. It's one of the blessings, I think, of being a Guru Kuli is if you preface with I should be, it allows you to think, I wonder why I'm not interested in doing that.
Right.
Which allows you to introspect and be a little honest with yourself, and that allows you to see where you are actually right now. So there are times that I haven't had any desire or taste for reading Srila Prabhupada's books. I had an experience once on Sankirtan when I was a young devotee coming back to the movement. And it was a very stressful and distasteful experience of book distribution. And that put me off the idea of reading Prabhupada's books, because if devotees are so fanatical, what are we getting from all of this? So those are some challenges that I know that people can face.
Right.
Taking Prabhupada for granted is a really dangerous, easy to do thing, and very dangerous. One of the blessings that I've had traveling around as a Kirtaniya is I've met so many different kinds of groups and organizations around the world. And it's become crystal clear to me that there is no one like Srila Prabhupada on the world scene in recent memory and recent history. That we have detailed information about their behavior, their words, their activities, their interactions with their disciples. There just is no one whose character, example, mood, enthusiasm, faith matches that of Srila Prabhupada. When you put the whole package together, it's, to me, quite a glaring thing. That even though there are wonderful people, many, many hundreds and thousands of wonderful people, even teachers and enthusiasts and community leaders, Prabhupada is unique. Srila Prabhupada is unique. And when you're able to appreciate that, for me, that was a door-opening experience. To think, well, such a unique personality, what is it that he is trying to say? What is it that he's trying to give? The book that really opened for me a deeper appreciation of Prabhupada's books is Krishna book. And one of the things growing up in the movement, Krishna book was read a lot during meals. The joke was, that's how you get to know a lady, as you go drink hot milk and read Krishna book with her. It's like how you're meant to associate with a lady properly in ISKCON. And the truth is, Krishna book is quite romantic, actually. It's a very beautiful book, filled with all kinds of sweetness. And if someone can build their relationship upon Krishna book, that would be quite a lovely relationship, I believe, actually. But I was able to fall into Krishna book because of an app. This is touching on Kincana Prabhu's point. An app called My BVL, which is a free app put out by Tulsi Prabhu and Damodar Prabhu and some devotees from New Vrindavan in America. And it's a free app where they're reading Prabhupada's books. And what's great for me about that is I can keep my hands busy. I can be doing yard work. Americans are famous for mowing lawns and trying to keep their lawns green. These are things we have to do as householders in America. My BVL, excellent.
Good app. Very good.
It's a good app. And I hope that they continue. They're in the process of getting Prabhupada's books there. But hearing Damodar Prabhu reading Srila Prabhupada's words in a very clear, well-spoken voice was just what I needed to pull me in. And I fell in love with Krishna book. And it was very helpful for me. One of the special things that I realized about Krishna book is Srila Prabhupada did something that was historically unprecedented with Krishna book. He took the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, and he says this, I believe, in the introduction or preface, and anywhere that Sukadeva Goswami mentions Krishna, he pulled that out. Isn't that fascinating? I'd never realized that it was so systematic. I thought it was just Srila Prabhupada's telling the Krishna stories in a way that would make it accessible for Western people. But Prabhupada basically says, in one of the introductions or preface something, he says that he's taken everything, everywhere Sukadeva Goswami mentions Krishna. Now, here was my meditation on this, why I found that so fascinating. Srila Prabhupada is taking these quotes from Sukadeva Goswami, getting rid of anything except the direct mention of Krishna's Leela. And then Srila Prabhupada is explaining in his own words, in a narrative form, what Sukadeva Goswami is saying. We're basically hearing, word for word, Srila Prabhupada's ecstasy in meditation on the Leelas of Krishna. That's what Krishna book is. And when I realized how unprecedented that was, it just made me appreciate the book and Srila Prabhupada so much. And then I moved on to teachings of Lord Caitanya in the same mood.
On the point of appreciation, something that kind of hit me was one devotee was telling a story about Prabhupada. Like he would guard Srila Prabhupada's rooms in the night, and he would be outside the room because I don't remember where it was, but it was like in the middle of the night.
Adipurush Prabhu in New Vrindavan, I believe.
Right, something in the middle of the night, and then he would see Prabhupada get up in the morning, and he would, with his own eyes, see him taking out the book, the huge book, and then putting the dictaphone and just working through the night to do that. That visual that he had was so powerful for him to understand, like the connection between the book that he's reading years later and that experience that he had, that Srila Prabhupada actually worked so hard to do all this. And if we don't read the books, then is that really showing our how is that, showing our appreciation, so that's a great point. Kirtan Prabhu, do you want to add a few more points that you had before we go into the next topic?
Well, actually, Gauravani said, that another very powerful tool for being regularly connected to Srila Prabhupada's books, I find, is audiobooks. Hearing recordings of devotees read the books. I just in my lamentation for missing Bhubaneswar, I don't know how many countless times we went through the Krishna book together. For example, that was a regular that was one of the regular things that we would read at night. And after he left, I was thinking, like, how am I going to be as absorbed in these books again? And anyway, I just looked for that app that Gauravani Prabhu mentioned, and it looks really worthwhile. Damodar Prabhu is definitely one of the audiobook readers that's very pleasant to listen to. But anyway, there's others. I found an audiobook reading like Amala Bhakta Maharaj, for example. I think he's
Classic.
fantastic. Somehow I listened to the whole Krishna book a couple of times, just kind of remembering Bhubaneswar and how we would read that, just for example. And there's so many others. It's a wonderful facility that devotees have created, that there's audiobooks, and I hope actually moving forward, it's something I'm personally very interested in, that more of our devotional library can be recorded as audiobooks. I mean, it makes it really easy, but it's very powerful, and it's like extremely effective. Like Gauravani said, like for example, I often cook in the middle of the day. It's maybe 45 minutes of my day. And if I hear a chapter of Caitanya Charitamrita or something, like my day is like so much more enriched than if I had just kind of, done the same thing, the same kind of service in silence, or even, in the morning while you're getting ready, or whatever, maybe there's things to do in the house, some housework, or just even taking a walk, being outside, whatever it is. There may be so many kind of spaces in your day where you could be like hearing something, and even spending some modest amount of time of your day hearing one of Prabhupada's books. I feel it like, it enriches your life in a very profound way. It enriches your sadhana, your chanting, your kirtan. It adds like a whole dimension to your life. And it's, so I wanted to say that point too about audiobooks. I find that's like a really powerful way to stay connected to Prabhupada's books, to Krishna Katha.
Great segue into what I wanted to talk about now, is the connection between kirtan and reading Srila Prabhupada's books. So I've been thinking about this since they asked us to do this, and I'm really interested to hear what you all have to say about the connection, because you all are kirtan leaders, and the connection between doing kirtan and reading Prabhupada's books. Giri Govardhan Prabhu, why don't you start us off? What is the connection there for you?
Well, as an aspiring Kirtaniya, I always thought that our challenge is that we not only do some nicely melodious kirtan, but actually that we could do some pure chanting kirtan. So this is I would find it the main challenge, to inspire the people, spread the holy name. So we need a foundation for this, so we need help for this. So there are different things that support our kirtan, and like sadhana, like japa, following 4 principles. But I found that reading the books is one of the most important things that I have found, because in the books you get the knowledge that is finding that why are you doing this, It's giving you the basis. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know why you're here, if you don't know what's your duty, who is the Supreme Personality of God, then, you just, like I heard Ayendra Prabhu saying that if you don't chant Sudhanam, you're just making a whole lot of noises there. So that's a challenge. And for example, There's one verse really has touched me a lot, and it's a verse from Bhagavatam, and then praised by Queen Kunti, a famous prayer. It says that if you're not materially exhausted, then nobody can easily approach you. And if you're on the path of, this verse, you're on the path of respectable parents, great opulence, high education, like that, then you cannot approach Krishna with a feeling. And then Prabhupada in purport, he says, that just by chanting the holy name once, you can burn as many sinful activities as you will never be able to commit. And then he says, there is no exaggeration for this, but this chanted must have quality. And what is this quality? It's the quality of feeling. So in order to develop this feeling, this quality of feeling when you are chanting, I have found myself, you need to read, you need to have this knowledge. So whenever I am not reading, I found myself that even myself, I don't inspire myself when I'm chanting. And then, and I wanted to say, just to complement what Orvan Prabhu and Krishna Prabhu said about the application, there has been one application that has really helped me a lot. That's called the Gita-based application, where all Prabhupada books are there. And, because you cannot carry the books around with the phone, anytime like I'm eating, I'm doing something, I can have the book and read it like that. So that has helped me a lot.
I really like that point you made about informing your kirtan. If you want to do kirtan with feeling, there has to be some type of sambandha gyan there of what are you doing, what does that feeling mean, or how are you what is that feeling exactly? That can come from reading the books. Gauravani Prabhu, why don't you tell us a little bit your connection between kirtan and reading?
Recently, I read a section, and I've been trying to find it. I had it, and I can't seem to find it right now. We did a Bhumi Puja in Washington, D.C. for a new temple installation. And I believe there was 54 yagyas that the devotees had organized. So different small groups of devotees were all centered around different yagyas. And we had some really powerful Brahmins come and do really spectacular setup. And one devotee showed me Srila Prabhupada's comments on the installation of Krishna Balaram in Vrindavan. And he said unequivocally that the deities are being installed by the holy name, and that whatever else is going on is to encourage the devotees and the guests and have people feel that this is a legitimate ceremony, and the pomp and splendor is there to communicate the importance of the event. But the actual installation, the actual ceremony, the actual yagya is being done by the chanting of the holy name in Kali Yuga. And having read that from Srila Prabhupada the day before that program, I went into Bhumi Puja with this sense of responsibility that whatever else was going on, I couldn't control it. But from my side, it was my job to do a Bhumi Puja with the holy name. I couldn't control what the Brahmins were doing. I couldn't control what the pujaris were doing. I couldn't control what the congregation was doing. But from my side, I had to be incredibly serious, because if I wasn't doing kirtan properly, from my side, I was failing in the installation of the Bhumi Puja for the temple. That was like I felt that responsibility because of reading Srila Prabhupada's words. I've come to the conclusion, much like Giri Govardhan Prabhu was saying, Srila Prabhupada is our Acharya, and Srila Prabhupada's representatives are holding that same energy in our lives, and we have the responsibility to be devotees in more than dress and name. Prabhupada so visually speaks about the 2 paisa thread of the Brahmin.
Right.
So I'm also convinced what Prabhu said, that the way that we can develop taste is by seeing through the eyes of the acharyas and the devotees. And I've gotten in the habit also of trying to listen to lectures of Srila Prabhupada. There's another app I wanted to mention in this regard, which is Katamrita, which is a free app that is interesting in that Prabhupada just plays. And if you stop and you go like have breakfast, when you come back, Prabhupada's in another city.
Right.
The lecture doesn't stop. So there's this mood in my mind. It's like, Prabhupada's leaving. Like, he's going. Like, should I press stop? Because whatever Prabhupada's speaking about is going to be finished now, and I'm going to catch it later. So that's kind of exciting. It gives you a sense of enthusiasm.
Right. Thank you. Gauravan, Akinchana Prabhu, you know, Ayendra Prabhu, you had a lot of association with Ayendra Prabhu, and I'm sure you can share something, but the connection between Kirtan and the reading of Prabhupada's books, what would you say is the connection there?
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing up Ayendra Prabhu. I think he's a phenomenal example. You know, he's very famous, especially for his Kirtan Seva, and you know, maybe for his deity worship as well, like how he would dress the deities on the altar, and he had his own personal deity worship. But I think, you know, the foundation, like Prabhupada says, books are the basis. You know, I think, and I think that applies like individually and collectively, you know, to everybody's kind of spiritual progress. Books are the basis. With Ayendra's example, it was like actually astonishing how he heard Krishna Katha very, very thoroughly. You know, somehow he was spending so much time in his room. And first of all, just by speaking to him, you could understand, like, he's not just spacing out while he's in there, like he's fully absorbed. He's definitely done so much reading. There's examples I could give, but, you know, I think he slept very little, and throughout the night there was like lectures going on and being played. He was also an audiobook person because he would spend several hours on his deity worship. And while the deity worship was going on, maybe there would be like a person reading to him, or he had various recordings of books that he would listen to. So, right, the question is the connection. I think the point is that books are the basis. And chanting, you know, hearing and chanting are kind of like, you know, 2 lines of a track, or they're things that go together. You know, if one wants to chant nicely, one has to hear nicely. I think Prabhupada said that he was marked by Srila Bhakti-Vedanta, you know, as someone that really liked to hear. And there are stories in the life of Prabhupada, you know, where he patiently, like, you know, wanted to hear very thoroughly from his spiritual master, and his spiritual master marked him and appreciated, like, oh, I know him. When he was brought forward for initiation, Bhakti-Vedanta said, oh, I've marked him. He likes to hear. And I think Srila Prabhupada later credited, you know, that he was able to speak and to preach, which is, you know, another type of chanting. He was able to speak and preach because of that background of hearing. And with the holy name also, you know, I like the point Giri Govardhan brought up. We know that there's stages of chanting the holy name. There's chanting with offense, there's chanting on the clearing stage or the Abbas stage, and then there's chanting purely. And it may take considerable effort and purification to elevate the quality of our chanting from something that's just kind of mechanical to something that's like deeply devotional. I think and what you said also, to have the knowledge, to have the worldview, to have like the Sambandha Gyan, the Abhideya Gyan, the Prayojan Gyan, to have that understanding very clearly, that's a crucial element to what's going to purify, one's consciousness, and make one's chanting, powerful for your own benefit, for the benefit of others. It's a long road from Shraddha to Prema, and or it can be a long road. Anyway, and those different stages, I think you can think of them. It's kind of like we got like elementary school, and you got middle school, and you got high school and college, and maybe there's graduate schools and so on. I think that's what those different levels are. And basically where you are on that path is how pure are you, how cleansed are you of material desires, and how attached are you to the worship of Krishna. And practically, just like in school, in elementary school, the whole foundation of the curriculum is you got some books to study. And in middle school, there's like a new set of books to study that are like a little more advanced, a little more complex, for a more mature audience. And, in high school and college and so on. So, I think with Prabhupada's books, there, depending on where you are in your Krishna conscious development, there's like a curriculum that you're going to need to study hard for in order to be able to graduate to the next stage. So, yeah, there was a few points about that. I hope that was all right.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. What would you say? This is for any of our panelists here to answer. There's a new generation that's coming up of devotees, younger devotees, who are very much into chanting, very much into kirtan, but not very much, it seems, into sadhana, and part of that sadhana being reading or hearing Srila Prabhupada's books. What would you say to kind of encourage those who say, it says all we need to do is chant. We don't need to do anything else. That's our main thing. What's the reason we need to study the books? And for me personally, if I'm a young person, it's boring for me. It's hard to read. I don't understand it. I just want to chant. Who wants to take that question first?
Well, it's not a direct answer. I heard a story recently about a devotee who had grown up in the same region as Mirabai. And Mirabai had always been a figure in her life. She had grown up aware of Mirabai's devotion, from the same area, devotee of Krishna, family of Krishna devotees. And her mood was always, I just want to be like Mirabai. So when she came in contact with Prabhupada's devotees and she heard this business about chanting 16 rounds, she thought, I want to be like Mirabai. Why should I chant 16 rounds? I just chant all the time.
Right.
And why does it have to be fixed like this? And when she met her Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he said to her, Mirabai is chanting all the time. If you can't chant even 16 rounds, then you can't even utter the name of Mirabai. First chant 16 rounds, and then you can talk about Mirabai chanting all the time.
Wow.
Just a reframing. I do think there's some responsibility from now that I'm part of the older generation. Not a kid anymore. I now have teenagers, 3 teenagers. So now the responsibility is on me to make reading Prabhupada's books and studying Prabhupada's books enchanting, exciting, inviting. One of the meditations I've had during this COVID time is it's so easy to criticize others with the world of social media and distance provided by the COVID time. It's become so simple to just think of someone and dance your fingers on the keyboard, give them a little piece of your mind, and then go back to your whatever. But one of my meditations has been to try and look with the same eyes inside and see where I am in comparison with my ideal. In other words, not comparing myself with him, this guy who I'm criticizing, that lady who I'm criticizing, this topic, that topic, but to see, I'm seeing this lack in the world, but how am I doing in that category of lack? So an example would be the Ji-bi-si, they just blah, 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 blah. But what they really should be is blah, 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 blah. So then I ask myself, well, how am I in the department of blah, blah, blah? And if I'm not in a situation where I'm feeling strong in that department, I've decided that what I should do is focus all available energy, including whatever would take for me to criticize someone, on bringing myself up to a level that I feel happy and confident with my meditation, my reading, my dedication, my selflessness, whatever, my example. And I've realized I have such a long way to go. My feeling is that the young people should be encouraged in their chanting like anything. There are so many nonsense young people in the world that are doing all kinds of garbagey nonsense. And we have a generation of young people that want to sit hour after hour and do kirtan. You can't compare that to young people in any other organization in the world even. There's an executive from Google who's a friend of mine, and he said, I've seen so many organizations, and ISKCON has this enthusiastic young generation that you don't see it elsewhere, where they're more enthusiastic about carrying on, even though the founder has passed. I really appreciated that. So then the question is, what am I doing to really develop a taste and enthusiasm for reading Srila Prabhupada's books, so much so that I can transmit it to others?
Great point. Be the example for the younger generation.
You know that famous story that Srila Prabhupada also quoted from Gandhi about the lady who goes to her guru and asks him to tell the kid to stop eating sweets because he has, right? You know that story?
Yes.
Diabetes runs in the family, and the guru says, come back in 2 weeks. And then finally 2 weeks come, and he tells the kid, please stop eating sugar. It's not so good for you. And then the mom says, why couldn't you say this 2 weeks ago? He says, well, at that time I was eating too much sugar. So I needed to first stop myself before I could instruct others.
Right.
Because there's Shakti there. Even on the material level, there's Shakti there when someone's actually doing rather than just speaking.
Great point. Fantastic point. Giri Govardhan Prabhu, do you want to comment on my question?
Yes. Well, I have two things that I wanted to say, because, I heard that the conclusion or the reason why we are distributing so many books and we are reading so many books, the conclusion should be that we have to chant. Why are we distributing so many books and reading? Because we want to convince people to chant. So that's going from reading the books, going to the conclusion of chanting. But also, this young generation, like they haven't read the books, but they're already chanting. So there's the other opposite way. For example, I was once in Woodstock, and then they have this nice tent where they do kirtan all the time. And then all these young people come there and they just dance and chant. So I was there And one of these ladies, they just coming out from dancing, and she asked me, can you tell me something about this? I don't know what's going on. I've been dancing and chanting, and I feel so happy, but I don't even know why I'm feeling happy. Can you explain to me what is going on? So from that point of view, you said, well, they had a tent next to it where they explain the philosophy. So once the people come out from the kirtan, then they go into the tent. Okay, now we're going to explain to you why is it that you're feeling like that. So that's the other point, going from the chanting and hearing to the philosophy. But I think that the two of them, they complement each other. I mean, you cannot have one without the other one. And once you go, I think this young generation, now they're very enthusiastic and chanting and dancing like that. But there will come a time in their spiritual life where they will, ask themselves, okay, so what else is there? And, if they say that when you chant, tears should be flowing from your eyes, why not experience this? So then they would want to go deeper, and that's where the books are going to help. That is, so this is my point. They complement each other.
Yeah, thank you. Kinshana Prabhu.
Yeah, I appreciate very much what Gauravani Prabhu said, that we can appreciate the positives that's really there. How many devotees are enthusiastic about doing kirtan, and how wonderful that is. The way that you kind of framed the question was almost that there's young devotees who are kind of like defensively and like antagonistically, like, we don't read, we just sing Hare Krishna. But in my own experience, I actually don't find that devotees are like that. I'm connected with many devotees who are especially like in their 20s, who are like super enthusiastic, and some of them are like super talented, and they do tons of kirtan. But my experience is, if you a little bit encourage them and say like, hey, Prabhus, like maybe we should get together and read something sometime. They're actually really positive and open about that. It's not like, no, we don't do that.
Right.
They're, so, I find that, several of Gauravani Prabhu's points were great. First of all, I should criticize myself. I should take it as, how serious am I about reading? And if I'm looking at other devotees and thinking, hey, are they really reading enough? I can call on myself, like, am I helping them, or am I encouraging them, or
Right.
is there anything I could do to like help with that? So yeah, I don't think that it's like that we should fault devotees exactly, but I think that individually and collectively, the path of Krishna consciousness is like so great, and there's so much to be accomplished that practically all of us, there may be room for improvement, and So for myself, how can I improve myself? How can I be better about hearing Krishna Katha and reading books? And how can I help others? I mean, I think that's like a great aspect of the book distribution effort. One thing is to sell books, but another thing is to read books. And if you can help others read, then that's like, I think, a fundamental aspect of book distribution. And so I think that young devotees should be encouraged, and we should try to be a good example. We should try to create spaces where devotees feel inspired and encouraged to read.
I really like that point. We should make a atmosphere or situations when we're with other devotees that, hey, let's read something instead of let's hang out or, or just talk prajalpa. Let's read something, and then that will help to change this culture, perhaps in our own little circles of devotees that we have, wherever we are, our own circles. We can change. We can start this culture of reading Prabhupada's books more regularly and together. I think that's it. That's kind of what I'm taking away from this whole conversation, is that it's not something that's done necessarily by ourselves. It's something that's done even congregationally, to read, to discuss and things. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. We're coming up to the end here, and I want to just maybe we can have some closing statements from each of our panelists here, just regarding reading Prabhupada's books, maybe some words of encouragement, or the connection between kirtan and reading, or just any thoughts that you may have to close this. Giri Govardhan Prabhu, please start us off there.
Well, being the title of this celebration, the books are the basis, I would say that it is like that. There is no going deep into your chanting. There is not actually advancement if you don't read these books. That has to be established. Now, how you do that, then that's how you come with all these ideas, no? And for example, I think audiobooks also share Krishna Prabhu's life. That has helped me a lot. Like I said, I am more like audiovisual. For example, now here in India, they're selling these music boxes with a stick of all Srila Prabhupada audios. And I think that's the best thing that I've ever felt in my life, because I just turn on and it's like Prabhupada, and I have all the classes. For example, I always had problems by reading the introduction of Bhagavad-Gita, because it's long. But there is actually Prabhupada class, the introduction of Bhagavad-Gita. So I found in this recording the audio book of Srila Prabhupada when he spoke the introduction of Bhagavad-Gita. So it was so much nicer to hear Prabhupada, the introduction, than also to reading. So all these tools are really helpful. And well, I think we should encourage people to read no matter how. Try to find a way to read audiobooks, apps, reading with devotees. My Guru Maharaj also told me, you sit down with your wife, two of you with books, and then you start reading. And at the next period, then she can start reading. And then the next period, you can follow, because sometimes, if the other person is just reading, you may lose focus. But like this, you keep on reading both. Those are different ideas. So yeah, definitely, books are the basis.
Thank you. Akinchana Prabhu.
Yeah, I think that hearing Krishna Katha, reading the books of Srila Prabhupada, it's the basis for our advancement in Krishna consciousness, the foundation. And chanting is the Yuga Dharma. Chanting is the most wonderful, auspicious activity. But if we really want to get the benefit, if we really want to improve the quality of our chanting, if we really want to chant in a way that can maximize the benefit that we get, that others benefit from, then hearing Krishna Katha, reading is going to be fundamental to kind of upgrading our qualification to be able to chant. So yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to preach to myself. I hope to be better about reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and hope to somehow contribute to helping and encouraging others to realize Srila Prabhupada's books.
Thank you. Gaurvani Prabhu.
I want to apologize in advance for what I'm about to say, because I'm going to close with this controversial idea.
Okay.
So forgive me, don't mean to offend. Sometimes young people, modern people, they feel hesitant to read Srila Prabhupada's books because they feel that he's from another time, that he's culturally distant from their modern lives, and that certain things Prabhupada said are out of time or not fully applicable, relevant, or even may offend. And what I would like to say is that we are a society of personalists. We hold this faith based greatly on Srila Prabhupada's teachings, that Krishna is a person, that God is a person. It's a very revolutionary idea. Most religious people these days cook down their faith into some sort of impersonalism, that God's everything, everywhere, holding us, we're part of God. Almost any tradition can cook it down to this thing, but we're radically with this idea that not only is God a person, but the source of our personhood, and achinta veda bhed, like we are eternally a person in connection with the person. And to some of the points made earlier, our relationship will continue to grow and increase over time. It's not that we're going to read all of Srila Prabhupada's books and then we're done. Our knowledge of Krishna will continue to increase eternally as we get closer and closer to Krishna, eternally, right? That awareness grows. So Prabhupada is also a person. And I know some devotees immediately are going to like, okay, that is nonsense. Gaurvani just said Srila Prabhupada is a person. Srila Prabhupada is not a person. He is a nitya siddha. He's not just a person. My point is, there are so many things, growing up in the movement, years of listening to classes and things that I just didn't understand. I don't get. And then I'll come back to it later and I'll hear it for a second, third, fourth, fifth time. And suddenly, oh, I see now that there's something there that I missed. So if there's some controversial statement that young people or modern people are turned off by, that Srila Prabhupada has written about or spoken about, I encourage us to read it together as a community and discuss it, breathe oxygen and life into it, light and sunshine, try to understand and try to be present with Srila Prabhupada, the person who is the Nitya Siddha, who brought all these beautiful teachings, and challenge ourselves to try and go deep in our understanding. I believe that dialoguing with Srila Prabhupada's writings in a community with friends and dear ones about things we understand and things we don't understand will help us to get closer to the person of Krishna. And even if there are things that we won't ever understand that Srila Prabhupada wrote or said, if we discuss them in Sangha with other devotees, we will become better devotees for that discussion and for that sharing and listening and learning and analysis.
Beautiful. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Thank you. So we're at the end, Prabhu's here. Thank you so much. On behalf of the ISKCON Ministry of Education, I'd like to again invite everyone to take part in the International Books Are the Basis Week of September 22nd through 28th. There'll be a lot of interviews coming out like this one. And please take part in that. You can find more on social media on their page. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for our panelists for joining us and talking about this wonderful and important subject matter. Hare Krishna. Have a great rest of the
Yeah.
Thank you to the number one facilitator in the entire Hare Krishna movement.
Sorry, Paul.
Yes.